start by welcoming everyone to our presentation today. In the next few minutes, we will take a look at something called FTP. What is FTP used for? Communication and data transfer. When I say what is FTP and what is it used for, there's a little bit more to it. FTP is an acronym for File Transfer Protocol. As the name suggests, FTP is used to transfer files between computers on a network. You can use FTP to exchange files between computer accounts, transfer files between an account and a desktop computer, or access online software archives. Many of us have already used it, and some perhaps even used it without their knowledge. If you log on to Microsoft, Google, Adobe and so on, in many cases if you download files from these sites, you have used FTP. FTP sites are many times heavily used, so therefore it requires multiple attempts sometimes before you can connect. File Transfer Protocol has been around for years, as I said before. File Transfer Protocol is the standard network protocol used to transfer files between one host to another host over a TCP-based network, such as the Internet. The protocol was first specified in June 1980 and updated over the years. And as I said, we are still using it, and many websites out there uses it for servicing customers and end users by allowing us to log into their sites and picking up files and download them to our computers. There's three ways of transferring files when we're talking about FTP. The first one is a graphical FTP client. And what is that? That is programs that has been developed to take care of these transfers and make it easier for the end user to log into sites and pick up files, or log into sites and upload files. There's another way of doing it is by using our browsers. It doesn't matter if we're on Linux, we are on Mac, or Windows. These platforms have browsers like Internet Explorer on Windows, or Firefox on Windows, Mac and Linux, or Chrome that's also on multiple platforms, and Safari. And we'll take a look at this later. Then we have command line FTP. It's a little bit more complicated because you have to write the string yourself, but it can be used, and we will take a few minutes where we'll take a look at how you can do that too. The first one we'll take a look at is the graphical FTP client. A graphical FTP client is a simplified way of transferring files and allowing the end user to drag and drop files between windows. So it's really very much user-friendly, and it is a way that I will suggest people is doing it because it makes many things much easier. It's easier to manage, it's easier to overlook, it's easier if you're logging in, transferring files, but you are getting interrupted. Then you can many times go back and pick it up again, and then you can continue the download that you were in the middle of doing. What needs to happen when you open the program and you want to log into an FTP site is that you have to specify the name on the FTP host. And here we can see an example on an FTP host address where you can see we're writing ftp.microsoft.com. That logs us into the site. That doesn't log us into an account where we can then start downloading files. Many times, if you are a user that has access to secure contents, then you need a username and a password. When we go on Microsoft, Adobe and so on, and are downloading some of these free programs, then you of course don't need a username and a password many times. But when we are talking about paid content, then it is a must to sign in with a username and a password. So let's take a look at some of these programs where you can download them. They're for free, and also where can you get paid programs and which would I suggest that you're using. Okay, let's go in and take a look at these free graphic FTP client apps that we can download on the internet. And I went to a website called techsupportalert.com, and here is some of the good ones listed. And what I like about this website is that they have listed them in a nice way where they have been testing them. So they have rated them so you can see how good they are. They have also added links where you can go to download these products, also what platform they're running on, and what limitations there are. Just because these apps are for free doesn't mean that you get the full version. Sometimes you get a light version where there are limitations. That can be in functionality or in how much you can upload and download in one swoop. So if we look at the first one here, Fire FTP here, it got 5 stars, great, but there is a limitation on that one. That is that it only allows you to upload, download 4 GB in one swoop. If you want more, then you have to purchase it. Then also you can see here that when you look at it, it works on a 32 and a 64-bit version. That's nice. But when you go in and look at it, it's only for Windows. So if I go further down, you can see here the same information, the link where you can download it, what platform it runs on, and here in this case here it only runs on Windows 2000 up to Windows 7 or 8, I'm sure, but it only works on the Windows environment. The one I like is the FileZilla, and I've used it over the years. The reason is that there is no limitations. It works on 32 and 64-bit platforms, and then it works on Windows, Linux, and Mac. And what I'm looking at is that because I am working on different platforms, I'm working on Windows, Macs, and Linux, I want so that if I can download that for free and I can make them work on all these platforms, then I only have to learn one program, and then I will get familiar with it and I will take advantage of the features that's there, instead of if I was working on different platforms but had to download different FTP clients for each platform because it didn't support the different platforms, then that makes it sometimes more difficult to get familiar with these programs and utilize them. So what I'll do next is I'll go in and take a look at the FileZilla so you can see how one of these graphic FTP client works, and show you how easy it is really to log in and download or upload files to an FTP site. As you can see, we logged into FileZilla-project.org, and in here we found the place where you can download FileZilla client and download FileZilla server. But what is the difference? The difference is that a graphic FTP client can transfer files, but you cannot make anything available for people. You can transfer it, but you can't sit and stand by and wait for people to log in. That's what the server is for. If you download and install a server, you can put files or make files available for others. Okay, so here we downloaded the FileZilla client, but if we click here, you can see there is more platforms in here. You can see you could download to a Mac, and if you click down here, additional downloads options, you can download to a Linux, and you can see here some of them are meant for 32 bits and some of them are meant for 64 bits, and you can see the same in regards to the FileZilla down here for Windows. So here you can cover all the platforms. But as I said, we went in here and downloaded a FileZilla 3.73 to a Windows machine. Okay, let's continue. So now we have downloaded the graphically FTP client from FileZilla. We downloaded it to our local machine and we have installed it here, and you can see that in the left side here of my desktop. And to get started, I click twice. So let's take a look at how a graphic FTP client looks like. And many of them are set up really in the same way, where you find the features, the placements of the status screens, and some of them are more graphically modern with shadows, and some is very plain, but it really works the same. What is unique by these is that they are easy to use. This one looks like if you are a Windows user and you used Windows for years, there was a program called File Manager Commander. It was one that was for free for many, many years, and it had this setup where you had two windows so that you could copy from one folder to another folder. In this setup here, you have a local site and you have a remote site, and as you can see, we haven't logged into a remote site yet, so that is empty. Over here, we have different windows. We have the window, the login status screen is the first one. Then we have a window here that shows us the folders in which we are. Here's the files and the folders that finds in the main folder. And then down here, when you start transferring, this will then be the status screen where you will see how far you are in regards to the file download or upload. Remember, you can, with a client, you can transfer files, but you cannot host them. So I mentioned very quickly that the client was one where you transfer from one place to another. That means you can upload or download, but if you have a server, you can install a server, you can put contents out there for everyone or for specific people where you need a user ID and a password to log in, and you can have that running 24/7 where people can log in when they want. Here, what we need this for is to approach a server like this and then exchange files, transfer files. So let's get started. What we do here is that we have these two windows, and then to get started, you can either do a quick way or you can use what is called here a site manager. You can go up to files. Here you can just click on Site Manager, or you can go down to the icons that sits down here, and when I click on that, you will see we get this Site Manager up here, and the only thing you need really is that you need a host, you need a user ID and a password. So let's just go through how that is set up. There's also other things here. Let me just bring a little bit of attention to that. You can create new sites. That means you can have multiple sites, and that's the reason I love it, because if I have different places where I'm picking up content, if I have to write it every time, I have to have my notes and so on. But if I can set it up and say, oh, but I have a list of these ones and this is the one I want to do, click on it, get in, either upload or download what I need and then get out again, I think that's an easy way of managing that. Then you can create new folders in regards to grouping your logins. You can bookmark them, you can rename them, you can delete them and copy them. And as I said, you only need a host name and you need a user ID and a password many times. If you don't need that and you log in as an anonymous person, then many times the only thing you have to give up is your email address. So here you can see, here I have a host, I have already set it up. The port that's used is 21 in nearly 90% of the cases when you log into an FTP site. The default port is 21. You can see the protocol is FTP, the file transfer protocol. In regards to the encryptions, that's up to the individual user. In my case, I don't use encryption, so I just use the plain FTP file transfer. Then in the login type is normal, but like I said, you can log in different ways as an anonymous person, or there's things that you can ask for. It's an interactive site, or it is an account where you need an account. That is mostly meant in regards to paid content. And so here you normally set it up as normal, then you put in your user ID, and then you put in your password, and then you can put down here comments. That's about it. More you don't need. There is different other tabs up here, advanced, transfer setting and so on, but right now we'll just concentrate on how do I just get started, because most of the sites are really set up very plain and easily to approach. So here I will go in and just say okay, then I'll go up here again, and you can see I have the icon again, open the site manager. I don't want to do that. I want to click on that little arrow next to it, and there you can see this is the setup I just set up. So I click on it, and you can see here's the login status screen, here's the folder I am on the local machine, and here is the files that are in this folder. But then when I come over here, you can see here is the removed site already, and here's the files that is available for me. So I like the way it works. What you do is you just go down here and say, okay, this is the public FTP. I'll go in there. Here's incoming. I'll go in there. And here's a file. If I want to transfer that file to my machine, the only thing I do is that I find the directory that I want to put it under. So let's just go under, let's say, blocks here. This blocks is empty. I take the file here. I can just click twice on it and it will start, or I can just pick it up, drag it over here, and you can see there comes a small plus, and just let it go. And you can see down here now, here is all the commands up here, and here's the status screen, and that file has already been transferred over to my machine, and that comes from an FTP host out there in the world. If I wanted to upload something, is is the same. I can just click on the directory where I find contents. Let's just take a small file here. I can either click twice on it or just drag it over here and let go. And you can see it's already uploaded to the site. What I also can do, because I own this FTP site, so I have the permission to upload and download. I have the permission to delete files, create folders. I have full access to that site. But many times you only have perhaps access to pick stuff up, but you don't have access to drop some off. So it is different, depends on how the site is set up and what kind of user you are. So here, I'll just go in here and click on this one and say, click on the right side of the mouse button and just say delete. Ask me, are you sure? Yes. And I deleted the content I just uploaded. Very easily, I think, very easy to overlook. This is what we call a graphically FTP client. And again, I mentioned it before in my video, is that you have a client and you have a server. A client, you can transfer files from one site to another or from one place to another, but you cannot host it. You can't put any files out there and let people pick them up when they want. For that, you need a machine that, first of all, is always on. And second, you need a server so that you can set up users that can log into the site, the grade of the level of security in regards to that user, what kind of user it is, and then what kind of folder can they read and write in, what kind of folder can they only read in, and so on. So the permission has to be set up, and that you have to use the server for. But this is a graphically FTP client. Okay, so here we have a FileZilla server interface. When you install FileZilla either on a workstation, and this here is a Windows machine because that's the only one that FileZilla server works on. It has to be the Windows platform. You can see here when I go into all programs and I find FileZilla here, you can see there's a folder here called FileZilla Server, and you have Start FileZilla Server, you have Stop FileZilla Server, and then you have the FileZilla Server interface. And when we start that up, it is a very simple interface where you see a window here, and when you go up to the server, you can see that the server is active. You can also lock the server if you do not want anybody to approach it. Under Edit, we have 3 points: Settings, Users, and Groups. Here you can set up, in regards to the settings, it's more like general settings where you go in and set up a welcome message and IP bindings, IP filters. You can go down and set up security settings in regards to if you want to block incoming server-to-server transfers or outgoing, in that matter. You can go in and define in regards to speed limits, make rules in regards to folders and files so that you can limit people in regards to resources. So all this you can do in here on the settings. We go up on the editing again and go under users. We have here so that we can create as many users or accounts as you want. In here we can enable an account. We don't have to delete the account. We can just go in and enable an account. We can set up their passwords. We can group them if we want to and set them up and say family, friends, or visitors. We can go in and see if we want, let them bypass the user limit of a server. Also in here we can go in and say in regards to what folders we want to share, and it's very easily because when we press add here and we find a drive and of course a folder we want to share, in this regard we can take the music here and then say OK. So now we just have to define in regards to the files in that folder, is it readable, writable, and can you delete it? What about the director? Can you list it, and can you go into subdirectories if these was created in there? And of course go in and link users to these limitations or rules. We can also go up and set speed limits in regards to rules that we have defined so that we can limit users in regards to resources. And then we can set up IP filters, who can log in, who cannot log in. Some are setting it up so that it can only be between 2 static IP addresses to increase the security, especially when you're working with FTP. So that's approximately what you can do, very simplified, but that's the way the FileZilla server works. How do I use it to transfer when I use a web browser? You can use a web browser to connect to an FTP address exactly as you will do when you connect to an HTTP address. Using a web browser for FTP transfers makes it easier for you to browse larger directories and read and retrieve files. It is so that the browser will take care of some of the details of a connection to a site and the transferring of the files. While this method is convenient, web browsers are often very slow and less reliable, and it has to be said, it has fewer features than a dedicated FTP client like the ones we just looked at, the graphic FTP client. If you go in and use a web browser, let's say you use it to connect to FTP Empire.gov, where you normally will enter an URL, you enter the following. You enter FTP : and then // then your username, then an @ and then you use the host name, the FTP host name, like here ftp.empire.gov. Hit enter, and then if needed, you enter your password. That's how you can use the web browser for FTP transfers. So let's take a look at how we will use our browser to FTP transfers. Okay, so let's go in and see how we can use our browsers to log into an FTP host site. And as it says, we have to use a browser, so let's go down and launch one of them. And you can see here you can either use Google Chrome, you can use Microsoft Internet Explorer, Mozilla Firefox, Opera, or Safari from Apple. In some cases, it has to be said that some FTP sites require that you're doing it with Microsoft Internet Explorer. There's not so many more, but it has been known that you had to go through a Microsoft Internet Explorer browser, especially when you log in to Microsoft. So let's launch here Google Chrome. As you can see here, we ended up on my default page, Google, and you can see up here we are on https://www.google.com, and that has to be replaced with the FTP host address. And in this case, it is FTP then vNvisionIT.com. Hit enter, then we have to wait a little bit, and it has to be said that using a browser to go to an FTP site and download or upload content is the slowest way of doing it. So here, authentication is required. It says here, the server 1 requires a username and a password. Here we put in a username and a password, and then we click login. Here we can see the folders. Here we can see index of the FTP vNvisionIT.com's FTP site. Here is that we can see these folders are available for us, and in this case he will just try to go into photos. So you click on photos. Then the next here is that we have an employee that has some pictures up there, and this is Doris, so I'll click on her folder, and here we have a list of pictures that's stored here on this FTP site. The way we'll do it is we'll just click on, let's say, the first one, and as I said before, it's one of the slowest way of doing it because it's very time consuming, and sometimes you have to do it one file at the time. And in this case here, we'll launch the picture, we'll click on the right side of the mouse, and then we'll simply save the image as. We can either define a new name or we can keep the name that is given to the file, and then we'll store it where we want. So we'll click here in this place here, and then we'll just say save. Then we can see it is now downloaded to our computer, and we can go up here and say let's go back to the list again and take the next file. We have to wait until it's getting updated, and then we can take next picture, next picture, next picture. It has to be emphasized, it is really a slow and tedious procedure when you're using your browser to go to an FTP site and download content. And so just be aware. That's it. Let's go and look at the command line feature and see how that works. How do I use it to transfer if I'm using a command line FTP? It has to be said that Windows and Mac OS and the Linux have built-in command line clients. And just to show you an example, when you start an FTP, what command you write in the prompt. And here's an example where it starts with an FTP space and then ftp.empire.gov. It has to be said that if you connect to your own account, then many times you have to enter your username and password. But if you are connecting to an anonymous FTP site, for your username, enter anonymous. For your password, enter your email address. And that's the way you use a command line FTP. So let's go and take a look. Okay, this time we will take a look at the command line FTP, and we will do it on a Mac this time. So the first thing we have to do is to go down here to the docking and find the one called Launchpad. When you press on Launchpad, you get all the programs that's installed on the computer if you go by page, and so on. But what we have to find is the folder called Utilities. In the folder Utilities, you have a program called Terminal. So we'll click on that. Now Terminal is started, and what we have to do here is that we have to write all the commands ourselves. So we knew that we have to come up with the host name, then the user ID, and then the password. So here we write FTP space FTP period, and then vn-it.com, and then hit enter. Now it's asking us about the name. We will give it the name, and then the password, and enter. Now when we go in and list, that we do by writing ls, we can see that we are now on the FTP server, and now we want to go into one of the directories. So we will cd as change directory, and then vdo. Now we'll list again ls, and then we can see here there is a video file. Let's download that to our machine. That we do by writing get space, and then we write the file name. And before I hit enter, I will launch our Finder, just so you can see that as soon as I hit enter, it should be downloaded to the computer. We can see in here there's only 2 files in here in our root directory. So if I go up here again and then hit enter, and you can see now that the file name was just written here lower, and you can see now that the file is getting downloaded from the FTP server. As I've mentioned before, when you do a command line FTP transfer, it is always more complicated. You have to know the commands that has to be written on the line. It is always more difficult to do it through a command line FTP, but I just wanted to show it to you. Okay, that was the last of our sessions, and to make a quick summary, as we started up, we looked at FTP, which stands for File Transfer Protocol. We have used FTP since the 80s. Of course, there's made changes since then. We went in and looked at the 3 different ways that you could upload or download file from a host. The first one we looked at was the graphical FTP client, and if you remember it, we looked at the FileZilla, the FileZilla client, and the FileZilla server, and it was a program that you could download for free from the internet. The reason I choose to show you that was that that specific client can be used on Linux, Windows, or Mac, but there are others in there, and some are for free, some have limitations because they're for free. Then we took a look at the web browser, used the web browser to download and upload files from an FTP server. It has to be said it is one of the slowest way of doing it, and also it doesn't have as many features as the graphical FTP client, but we took a look at that. We used a Chrome browser to do it, but you can use Internet Explorer, you can use Firefox, you can use Safari, and so on. And then at last we went in and looked at the command line FTP, and what it has to be said about that, yes, you can do it, but it really means that you have to be aware of the command commands that has to be written in there when you create the string. So you have to be very familiar by using the command line structure, but I just wanted to show you that it can be done and that all systems, Linux, Windows, and Mac, is born with that. So you can just go in and use the command line structure and then go in and upload or download files from an FTP site. That's it. That's all for this time. I hope you had a great time, and I hope to see you guys back here again.